This is The Big Bad Boot.
We're siblings who explore spooky and scary stories, urban legends, tall tales, and true crime, all located in this crazy state that's shaped like a boot. A podcast about the weird state you wish you were from.
Hosted by the weird siblings you wish you had.
On May 23rd, 1934, a bullet-ridden Ford V8 is being towed into the town of Arcadia, Louisiana. So Arcadia, for those of you that don't know, is very north of the state. It is like in the very tip top of the boot. And it is near Shreveport. It's like south-ish east of Shreveport. So it's like way up there, okay?
Go to bed. Y'all from Shreveport?
It's north, you know?
Wow, yeah.
The small town, which normally boasted around 2,000 people, has swelled to crowds of over 12,000.
Wow.
Helping to catch a glimpse of the two mangled bodies inside the truck. The car had been shot over 150 times by law enforcement, causing even more commotion from the throngs of people who were now lining the streets, so much so that it forced the car to slow to a crawl. They could not get through the crowd. And since that day in 1934, the towns of Arcadia and Gibbsland, Louisiana, live in infamy as they mark the final stop of one of America's most infamous crime sprees. This is the story of Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, I'm excited.
I know, this is such a good one. I mean, this has been one of my favorite stories, period, not just anything to do with Louisiana, but not everything about this story because people died. But besides that, everything else is really interesting. And it's not just me that finds it interesting. We'll get into that.
Okay.
Right.
And I think it's a good story because it's kind of like, they were kind of like Robin Hood. Like they had a lot of like fans. Like people wanted them to make it.
Oh, you're getting there. We're going to get into that.
I'm excited.
Okay. My sources for today, an episode of the podcast Crimes of the Centuries, which is one of my favorite podcasts that is in my rotation every week, hosted by Amber Hunt. Highly recommend. An episode of the American Experience podcast by PBS, and episodes of The Last Podcast on the Left, which is also always in my rotation, and the book called Going Down Together, The True Untold Story of Bonnie and Clyde by Jeff Gwynne. A lot of my research came from this.
Okay. Oh, that title's sweet.
Isn't it? I know, it's good.
That's sweet.
And, of course, the Netflix movie The Highwaymen, starring Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson.
Which was shot in our hometown.
In Hammond, America.
Yeah.
Hammond, Louisiana. That is a very good movie. Some of it is not actually historically accurate, but we'll get into that. The movie, I mean.
Right.
Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So before they were shot down in 1934, Bonnie and Clyde, they are two of the most famous criminals and couples in American culture. But once their 2-year spree was all said and done, they had killed at least 13 people. And 9 of those people were law enforcement officers.
Okay. I don't ever think about that.
Mm-hmm.
You never think about like their victims.
Right.
Wow.
And a lot of the people that they killed it was absolutely senseless that they killed. And there were a lot of people that they killed were for no reason.
What?
Yeah, which we'll get into.
It's upsetting.
They've been celebrated, but also criticized for their escapades. But the fact remains that they appeared in the American psyche during a time in our country where it was ripe for criminal activity, period, but also for the fascination of criminal activity.
Remind me, what time period is this?
So we're in when they were at the height of their crime spree, early 1930s. Okay. So towards the end of the Depression.
We're,
people
out of
are,
the roaring 20s.
People are poor.
Right.
Okay. So and we'll get into why that is important. But that's just a quick overview that I want to say off the jump is these people are celebrated, but they're also criticized because they did kill people.
Right.
And that sucks. And
you really don't think about it.
Right, because everything's glamorized.
Right.
And they also weren't that great at robbing banks, which people don't know that either. They were not great criminals. Right? See, I'm so glad you don't know any of this.
Well, I always remember them as like celebrated criminals.
So, because you're probably thinking of the movie.
Me and Cameron dressed up as Bonnie and Clyde for you and Michael's engagement party. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I guess I didn't research that well.
No.
Back then, but I thought they were celebrated and
they're glamorized.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people think of the movie with Faye Dunaway, which I was obsessed with that movie when I was little. By the way, that was the first movie that Gene Wilder ever did. Do you know Gene Wilder? Willy Wonka?
Oh, Okay.
That was his very first movie.
I don't think I've ever seen
It's
that movie.
It's not accurate at all,
Okay.
but highly recommend it just for the vibes. It's not a bad movie. It's just not accurate. We're going to start with Clyde.
Oh, Clyde.
Oh, Clyde. This is how I pictured that they would talk back then. Oh, Clyde.
I simply cannot have a baby in this weather.
Daddy was never the same after the eclipse. That's how I picture everybody talking back then. They
What was
probably
that
didn't.
called? That like BSX? Transatlantic. What? Riddle me this. What is transatlantic? Because doesn't that mean the middle of the Atlantic?
Well, it was just an accent that came from that time period that it was not quite Southern. It was not quite Northern. It was...
Right. Because transatlantic, wasn't that like curated by the movie industry?
Sort of, yes.
Anyway, sorry to chase that rabbit.
Yeah. So Clyde, get this name, get into this. Clyde Chestnut Barrow. That's his name.
Oh.
I love it.
He got picked on.
Clyde Chestnut Barrow.
Chestnut?
Old Chestnut.
Okay, sure.
Well, I mean, when you think about it back then, like both of our grandfathers, they also had like really weird names.
Only one of them.
Well,
one of them.
Melvin.
No middle name.
No middle name.
Just Melvin.
And then Richard Zofer. So I feel like they just were too busy to think about names.
I guess. I mean,
Maybe
Zophar is in the Bible.
She just, I guess, had him under a chestnut tree. We don't know. His name's Clyde Chestnut Barrow. And I'm going to say it like that every time.
Okay.
He was born on March 24th, 1909 in southeast of Dallas, Texas. He was the fifth of 7 children. So they had a litter of children.
Sucks.
But this was back when you had to have all these children because you had to have people to work. You had to have bodies to literally help you survive. And when I say these people were poor, like...
Probably because they had 7 kids.
No, it wasn't because they had 7 kids.
Man.
When I say dirt poor, that's not a euphemism. Like literal dirt. They lived in the dirt. Okay.
Like old people?
No. They were living under their wagon. Like they didn't even have like a home.
Oh, that breaks my heart.
Right. So his parents were named Henry and Cumie Barrow.
Cumie.
Old Cumie. She had 7 kids. And this was at the very, 1909. So, we're still kind of removed from the Depression, but people are still so very poor. And this was a time in our country, even more so as we get closer to Bonnie and Clyde's actual time of when they did things.
Mm-hmm.
The disparity of wealth was, so big, where you had people who were so vastly, obscenely rich.
Right, like the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan.
But then you had people who literally lived in the dirt.
So there was almost like an absence of a middle class.
No middle class. Right. And it was very hard for you to get out of that. If you were born poor, you were going to stay poor. It was just that.
Predestined for you.
That's an important point of Clyde's personality. They decide to move to go into Dallas, closer to Dallas, to try to find work because they were farmers. And they moved to literally a tent city called the Devil's Back Porch. That's literally what it was called. That's not a nickname. It was where the poorest of the poor of Dallas went to live. So it was a slum.
The Devil's
Back Porch. And it was also positioned in a spot where it was across the river from Dallas. So they could literally wake up in the morning and see skyscrapers being built in Dallas and all of these rich people knowing that they would never get to that point. So that's what this Clyde was born into, was immense poverty.
Man.
They slept under their wagon.
That's so sad.
I know. And his dad was a very hard worker. These people were salt of the earth, sun up to sundown, hard worker. Clyde, we love us some Clyde because guess what he was? He was a short king.
Oh.
Yes.
Clyde Chestnut.
He was very cute, very good looking.
Okay.
But he was on the smaller side. He was 5'6" when he was an adult, and he was never over 130 pounds.
Me either. Just kidding. Obviously.
I only weigh 82 pounds. But he hated the fact that he was born into poverty. He especially took offense to this because he resented that this was all his life was ever going to be.
Oh.
This was a time where there was no upward mobility between the classes at all. And with that, there's like little motivation for like living an honest life.
Well, I mean, if you're already poor,
right?
Well, I mean, if you go to jail, at least you're getting 3 meals a day.
3 hots and a cot, baby.
Ooh,
that's what they called it.
Oh, I was like, is that from like the gold mine?
Oh, you thought I just made that up?
I did.
I should have went with it. But yeah, 3 hots and a cot. So when you're born into something like that, you can almost see why people at that time turned to illegal activity, because why not? It can't be worse than what I'm living in right now. I'm living in dirt, right?
Literally dirt.
So he decides he wants to follow in the footsteps of his older brother, get into it, Buck. I love the names in this story.
Hey.
Clyde and Buck Barrow. Like they sound, Buck Barrow to me sounds like a really hot baseball player.
Or a NASCAR driver.
Yes, like right. Buck Barrow. It sounds like he's sponsored by
Fig Newtons.
Fig Newtons.
Here comes Buck Barrow from the slingshot. Boogity, boogity, boogity.
He put the logo on his windshield, and what does he say?
I do love this windshield is dangerous and inconvenient, but I do love Fig Newtons.
Yeah. So his brother Buck takes Clyde under his wing, and they start stealing chickens.
Wait. Like,
yeah, what other chickens are there?
But why?
Okay.
Oh, I guess to eat, but like...
it's the perfect thing to steal. Because either you go... Yes, because you either go sell them, or you can eat them.
I would have never guessed that they were stealing chickens.
They started stealing chickens. But they graduate to stuff earlier on. But when he first gets arrested, it's because he's stealing chickens. So he's got some hot chickens in the back of his truck.
You better get into it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Willie's Chicken Shack started. I'm just kidding.
No, I wish.
That'd be cool.
But, so they're stealing chickens. And by the time he's 17, though, Clyde perfects what will become his signature crime, which was stealing cars. This was the golden age of car thievery. And I feel like you would be very good at explaining this because you're a car nerd.
Yep. I know exactly where this is
going.
going.
So why in the early 1920s and 30s, why is this the golden age of car thievery?
Because Henry Ford had perfected the electric starter. So
you're exactly right.
Clyde was good at hot wiring cars.
He could hot wire a car in under 20 seconds and be out of there.
Wow.
So that's really what he was good at. When historians look back, that was his true talent, was stealing cars and driving cars.
Yes. And that's one thing I know about this story, which I don't want to take it from you.
No, you're good.
But can I?
Yeah.
He loved the Ford V8.
That's exactly right.
He even wrote a letter to Ford thanking him for creating the Ford V8.
He said, you have a mighty fine car.
Yes.
Yep.
He could outrun any law enforcement.
In another life, he would have been a NASCAR driver. 100%.
Oh,
because he was little.
Yeah.
He was muscular. He was the perfect build for a NASCAR driver.
Yeah, all racing like small people. That's what I did.
Yeah. You are very small and petite.
Well, I had to get a whole nother car because I literally outgrew my car. But it's very important to be as little as possible.
Well, you're beautiful. But yeah, thanks. Clyde was a short king and he was really good at stealing cars.
Good for him.
So let's meet Bonnie. Again, I said I love the names in this story. Everybody shut up because these are probably going to be the names of my kids. Are you ready? Bonnie and her sister Billie Jean. Get into it.
I love Billie Jean.
Bonnie and Billie Jean Parker. I know.
Billie Jean.
I know.
That's cute.
I told you.
Oh, I could have a niece named Billie Jean.
I feel like Bonnie also is my spirit animal for a couple of reasons. Her middle name was Elizabeth.
Oh. Okay.
And she had strawberry blonde hair. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker was born on October 1st, 1910 in Rowena, Texas. Rowena. Her dad died when she was really little. So her mom, whose name is Emma, she decides they need to move closer to the big city or as close as they can get if they're going to survive. She supports them by being a seamstress. And a lot of historians describe Emma saying that she raised her kids in a way of thinking that they were better than everybody else. But I don't like that. I think that she was raising her daughters to believe that they could be more than what they were born into.
Yeah, trying to raise a couple of feminists.
So she was very big on them doing well in school, them doing well in the arts. She wanted them to get out of the life that they were born into. And I don't think there's anything
That
wrong
sounds like
with
a
that.
really good mom to
Right.
me.
And so when they moved to the Dallas area, that's when Bonnie kind of comes in her own as a young woman and then an adult. That this had a huge impact on Bonnie thinking that she could change her life on her own. Like that she had there was a chance that she could change it. She was really smart. She was wonderful in school. There's notes of her that she won spelling bees.
Oh,
She was always the smartest kid in her class. She could dance, she could sing, and she loved to write poetry, which we'll get into that later. I have some of her poems.
Ooh, cool.
It's precious.
So she differs from Clyde in that aspect, where to her there's a light at the end of the tunnel. She can get out.
She's like an angsty, artsy teenager. Where she's like, maybe one day I'll be a movie star or a musician but specifically a movie star, because she would often lose herself in the movies. Anytime she had any extra money, she would go across the river into the city and spend all day in the movie theater.
On the talkies.
Yes, because she wanted the life of the ladies that she saw in the movies. That's what she wanted. And in 1926, she drops out of school at 15 years old. Her mother is pissed.
Nice.
And she wants to marry her boyfriend, Roy Thornton. Let me tell you about Roy. He was a piece of poo. He was not a good person. He would run around on her. If she asked about it, he would hit her. He was just awful.
Wow.
But Bonnie, I relate to her because she loved hard. Like, she tried to make things work.
Like when she found someone, she was invested.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, Bonnie and Clyde.
Right.
But okay, I get what you're saying.
And she even got I would not do this.
Matching tattoos with Roy.
She got his name tattooed on her upper thigh.
Oh.
Which
okay.
Interesting
I was
choice.
joking. I thought.
No, she really did.
Okay. Upper thigh.
Which you have to think in the 1920s for a woman to do that. That was kind of scandalous.
Kinda ballsy.
I kind of like her.
Me too.
Yeah. But nonetheless, he's a piece of crap. He runs around on her. They break up. She leaves him. We don't know if they ever get a legal divorce.
Oh, so she married him.
She married this guy.
Oh.
But in her mind, they're not together anymore. And she goes back to this single life. She's waitressing at this cafe. And she's just bored to tears. Like, she's thinking to herself, is this all my life is ever going to be?
Is there left out there so much she hasn't done?
Yeah, like Reba.
Yeah.
She writes in her diary, which this is real. She says, blue as usual, not a darn thing to do. Why don't something happen? Does that make you not want to cry?
It does. That's all.
Like, she's just in this
She's
slum
depressed.
in Dallas where she's like, I thought I had a husband. I thought this was it. And he ended up being a piece of crap. And now I'm right back where I started.
Literally, is there life out there?
Yes.
That is heartbreaking.
This sounds like it would be like a song, like a Taylor Swift song. Blue as usual, not a darn thing to do. Why don't something happen? Right? I love her.
I want to hug her.
I know. But don't worry. On January 5th, 1930, Clyde Barrow walks into her life.
Cool.
They meet at a party, and people say it's like instant sparks, like instant love at first sight kind of thing.
Okay.
He comes out of nowhere for her because you have to think he is handsome. Remember, he's a short king. We love a short king.
Mm-hmm.
He dressed really well. He drove a new car. Now, granted, it was stolen.
I was about to say, it was probably stolen.
But she didn't care because what did she want? She
wanted
something
to happen.
She wanted what she saw in the movies, and she wanted something to happen. So he embodied that to her. So she was like, I'm in. Whatever you're selling, I'm buying it. And family members who were interviewed later said that their love was not exaggerated. Like, that part of the story, they loved each other very, very much.
That is precious.
And there are times where throughout their 2-year spree, there is talks that Clyde tried to convince her to leave him because it was not safe for her anymore, and she wouldn't. She's like, we either die together or we stop together. We don't do it separately.
That's sweet.
Just a couple weeks after they start going steady, Clyde gets arrested.
Going steady.
He gets caught stealing chickens or whatever he was doing, and he gets arrested and sent to the county jail in Waco. And so he's there waiting for his sentencing. But nothing was going to keep these two apart. So he gets this idea to bust out of the county jail. This was back when, like, you could do that.
Right. There was probably like I'm thinking, imagine like a sleeping dog with like a basset hound.
Like Pirates of the Caribbean, where he has the
Yeah.
keys in his mouth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the sheriff's sleeping, he's going, and then the basset hound's going, yeah,
And it's like, come here.
yes,
And
very
he-
cartoonish of it.
Yes. So he decides he's going to bust out of jail, but he needs Bonnie to help him do it. So when she goes to visit him, he slips her a note. And in this note, he tells her to go back to his house and get a gun that he had hidden, a pistol, and smuggle it back into the jail to get him out so he can use it to escape as a weapon.
Wow, okay.
And he signs it, "You are the sweetest baby in the world to me." So, I mean, if she's like, you know what?
Wow.
Fine. Why not? And to me, this is like the crossroads of the whole story. Because if
the
you,
decision was made here.
yes, she could have been like, listen, it was fun while it lasted. You're literally in jail. I'm not helping you escape jail. I need to go back and figure things out. But he
Right.
hands her this note and she's like, I'm in.
You got me.
Gosh darn it, I'm in.
Yeah.
So she goes back, gets the gun, puts on a belt underneath her dress and hides the gun in the belt and then puts on her dress over that. She charms her way back in after visiting hours because they loved her. There's a lot of accounts where even people who were kidnapped by Bonnie and Clyde, once they were released, they were like, Bonnie was a peach. Bonnie was really nice.
Wow.
Right?
You have to really be a fan of someone.
Yes.
To be
It's
like, what
she
made you pick me?
You kidnapped me? Why me?
Right. Like,
You want me to get in the trunk so you think
I'm
I'm skinny? Yes. So Clyde and two other inmates, they escaped that night, but they were caught a week later. Bonnie was with them. As soon as they left, she gets on the road. She goes with them. And she goes back to her mom's house, but Clyde now is sentenced to 14 years in one of the most notorious institutions in Texas. And it's the East Ham, prison farm. And it's so notorious and violent, it's nicknamed the Bloody Ham. And I hate
the
that.
bloody ham.
The Bloody Ham. It sounds like a drag club.
Oh my lord.
Yeah.
The bloody ham.
But-
Anytime you have prison farm,
Uh-huh.
that's going to be rough. But the bloody ham,
The Bloody Ham.
I don't know if that sounds like scary or like a dish I want to eat.
You don't want to eat that. So the Bloody Ham was, you're exactly right, a prison work camp, and it was located on a 13,000 acre cotton plantation in the middle of Texas.
Ooh.
And the nation's most violent people, this is where they were sent. This was like, if you couldn't be sent to Alcatraz, this is where you went, kind of thing.
Oof.
And they weren't just there in cells. They weren't there as like rehabilitation. They were there to work. And they were there to work till the day they died or till the day their sentence was over. And it was basically on a plantation. They did backbreaking labor all day. They were beaten by guards. They got barely any food, barely any water. It was miserable. It was so bad that people sometimes would resort to cutting off fingers or toes or hands on themselves, cutting off their own body parts so they would have an excuse not to go work. So they could be like sent to another prison.
That's rough. That's a whole nother level of like misery.
Yeah. Well, Clyde has a terrible time here, and I'm not going to get into the specifics, but we have to remember he was a small, skinny kid. So you can
do the math.
He was often attacked and assaulted by a lot of people.
Aww.
And it was so bad that he decides to take matters into his own hands. He loses it, and he tells one of his fellow prisoners to take an axe and cut off two of his toes. So they do that.
They did?
They cut off two of his toes.
Whoa, okay, I didn't know that either.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got 8 toes.
Yeah. But you're going to hate this part. A week after he gets his toes cut off, he finds out that his mom got him pardoned and he was going to get to go home.
No
Yes.
way, bro.
Yes. Kumi Barrow had successfully petitioned the governor to release her son. And this happened sometimes because paroles were not uncommon because these prisons were so crowded that every now and then, just for funsies, the governor would be like, you sound nice. You can go home. Like you had a nonviolent crime. You can go home.
Well, now he's limping home.
He had a limp for the rest of his life because he didn't have two of his toes.
Brother.
Mm-hmm.
What toes? Do we know what toes they were?
I don't know. Like some accounts say it was like the first two, like your big toe and your second toe.
Because
But
I know if you lose your big toe or your pinky toe.
that affects it's got to be one of the two outer ones.
Yeah, you're right, I guess.
So, but he had a limp for the rest of his life. And being at this place affected him so deeply, and that's going to come into play later because later into their crime spree, he goes back to try to free more people from this place, which I think is kind of heroic. I like that about him. But prison changed him. And one of his fellow convicts, Ralph Foltz, said, quote, I saw Clyde. Wait, let me read this in an accent. I saw Clyde Barrow change from a schoolboy to a rattlesnake right before my eyes. He had in his mind made up he wasn't going to go back to that pen. He told both of his parents, I ain't going back to that hellhole. They'll have to kill me first.
Stop saying that wrong. No. Stop embarrassing yourself.
You're pronouncing that wrong. Yes. So I think my word of the day for Louisiana is going to be beignet.
Ooh.
I've been wanting to do this one.
I just got hungrier.
Which a lot of people think this is an obvious one.
It's not.
But it's on my brain because Bonnie and Clyde ordered food. Like that was one of the last things that they did when they were in Louisiana. Because the beignet is spelled like beignet.
Yes, beignet.
Beignet. And it's beignet. So today's Louisiana word of the day is
beignet.
It's not spelled like it sounds, and it does not sound like it's spelled. But nothing in Louisiana makes sense.
At all.
What is Popeye's slogan now? We don't make sense, we make chicken.
I want to get a tattoo of that, or if they have a bumper sticker, I'll buy
Popeyes,
it.
if you're listening, we're just going to keep doing
Send
that
me a bumper
till
sticker.
till somebody gives us
till it sticks.
Some free stuff, some sponsorships. So Popeyes, if you're listening, my brother will get that tattooed on his body.
I spend more money at Popeyes than I would like to admit.
You and my husband.
But it's worth it.
Have you had the biscuits? Come on.
Are you kidding me?
All
right, buddy.
Bet.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the America that Clyde walked into when he got out of prison in 1932.
How long was he in prison?
So he was sentenced to 14 years, but he wasn't in there very long, like maybe a year, I think.
Okay.
I'll have to go back and
look.
But
enough for like things to change.
Enough for him to be fully traumatized.
Right.
But when he gets out, the effects of the Great Depression are still so gripping our country. People are poor. Like, they're coming off of the First World War where, honestly, if you're farmers or things like that, it helped you. That economy helped you. And then we get out of wartime. We're in the Dust Bowl. Crops aren't growing. Then the Great Depression hits. Like, everybody is poor. If you're a blue-collar person,
you're poor.
You're poor.
Then somehow, I don't know why, but the Dust Bowl sounds worse than Great Depression to me. The Dust Bowl.
Well, do you know why the Dust Bowl happened? Like,
because it wasn't everything so dry?
Because during that time when they were all trying to grow crops for the war, when you're really growing crops properly, you let one area of land grow while one area rests.
Right.
And it's literally holding the land together. And there was nothing left to hold the land together. So everything was literally dust. So many Americans at this point think that the government, the police, and the banks are like the villains. And
I mean, you can't blame them.
You cannot blame them. So the gangster figure, this is when the gangster figure emerges in our country.
Exciting.
And it represented somebody that was at the bottom of the social scale, condemned to a life of nothing, who did not accept that and decided to do something about it, whether it was illegal or not. And so a lot of people found solace in that. And that's why there was such a rise into the figures of John Dillinger, Pretty Boy Floyd, Babyface Nelson. The best name for a gangster of all time, Babyface Nelson.
Yeah.
Well,
it's kind of like a pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of story. Now, it is illegal, but it's someone doing something to better themselves.
But if you're like, if I'm not hurting anybody and I'm just taking money from the banks, what have they ever done for me?
Exactly.
So,
or my fellow blue-collar worker.
Correct. So it was also understandable that people would want to be a gangster. Like
they're kind of like Robin Hoods.
They fantasized about doing it. So that's what he walked into when he got out of prison. Was the culture that he walked into. So Bonnie and Clyde, when he gets out, they begin their life of crime for real this time. And they set out on the open road. and they're going all across the country. Because remember, this man can drive.
Right.
He's like Ricky Bobby. The man can flat out drive.
I love it.
He's boogity boogieing all over. Sometimes he drives all through the night.
Because if you ain't first, you're last.
Exactly. And they start robbing gas stations, banks, grocery stores, but often it was just scoring enough money to like make it to the next place.
Okay.
It was never enough. They weren't getting rich off of it. It was just enough to keep them going.
Okay.
And at first they weren't violent. But Clyde realizes that it's going to have to get violent at some point if he's going to keep from getting caught.
Right. And I feel like if he's going to be able to steal enough to actually change his life,
You're exactly right, because he knew the only way to continue was to prepare for a fight. So he needed weapons. So he got really good at robbing the National Guard armories. Because all over the country, the National Guard had armories set up where it was literally just full of guns. And if you knew how to break into things and get out of there very quickly, it was yours for the taking.
That's scary.
So he goes all across the country stealing. His favorite weapon was the Browning automatic rifle, which in comparison to what law enforcement had at times, a lot of these places that they were going to didn't have actual police forces. It was literally like Barney Fife.
Oh, no, and
Andy Griffith with like water squirt guns and them with Remington bolt action rifles.
Wow.
Yeah. So you have to think it was the small cars and the big guns of Clyde Barrow versus the big slow cars and the small guns of the police.
Good
Yeah.
description.
Thank you.
Like, that really puts things into perspective.
Mm-hmm. So they were not getting caught.
No.
What they were good at was not crime. They were good at escaping. That was it. They were not like evil geniuses that I think a lot of people think them to be. They were not getting rich off of this stuff. What they were good at was stealing cars, outgunning the law, and outrunning the law, period. So there's a lot of like times that we could cover, like a lot of their exploits that we could cover, but I'm going to fast forward.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm ready.
So in 1933, they have been on the run for almost 2 years at this point.
Wowzer.
So much so that Clyde's brother, Buck, he's back, baby.
Okay.
I bet you Buck was like really attractive.
Buck's back.
Buck, him and his wife, Blanche. The names just get...
Blanche Devereaux.
Well, it technically was Blanche Barrow.
Yeah.
Which is pretty close.
That's pretty cool. Blanche was a Spitfire. I know it.
Oh, Blanche... sometimes, like, I don't dislike Blanche. A lot of people, especially in the movies, paint her as, like, a killjoy. Like, she's kind of the nerd. But she was the only one that, like, made it out of this thing alive. She was like, y'all, why are we doing this? Can we stop?
Right.
This is stupid, you know? But they join up with them. They decide to take a little vacation to Joplin, Missouri. And a lot of people say that this was the trip where Buck was supposed to try and talk Clyde into turning himself in. Because the family was seeing the writing on the wall, like, Clyde, you're not making it out alive.
Right. You're going down in a blaze if you don't turn yourself in.
You're dying. Yes. So you need to turn yourself in, but he wasn't doing it. And at this time, Joplin was a hot spot for bootleggers. So they could not have picked a worse place to go because all these cops there were on high alert for suspicious
so prohibition
people.
Is still
Yes.
happening. Okay.
Yes. And so one night on April 13th, 2 police decide to investigate where they're hiding out. Because they think it's bootleggers. They're like, it's a car we don't recognize. It's people we don't recognize. They must be bringing bootleg alcohol in here. And we can't have that.
But they actually don't even.
No.
Oh, no. So they're about to have a run-in with the law literally by chance.
Mm-hmm.
Like they haven't stolen anything in the Joplin yet.
I mean, they've like stolen a lot of stuff on the way there.
Right. But Joplin,
they're just there to hang out. Right? So,
man, that sucks, brother.
John Harriman, who was not even a real police officer, he was a farmer moonlighting as a police officer to make extra money.
So it's like PK when he's bored. Mm-hmm. That was a hobby.
Yeah, he's like, y'all need me to come be the justice of the peace and sign a
Can
marriage
I be
license?
deputized?
That's
it.
Dad.
Yes. That is Dad.
They approached the house, and they only had pistols because they think they're only going in to bust people making kegs of moonshine and stuff. Then the garage door flies open, and they are hit with a barrage of bullets from BARs.
Cool.
They're shot to pieces, these 2 men. Harriman dies instantly, And then the second officer, Harry McGinnis, was so riddled with bullets that his arm nearly falls off.
Ooh,
And he died later
I didn't
that
like
night.
any of that.
Yes.
I
So this wasn't the first people that died at the hands of them, but this was just two of a lot of people.
okay.
They killed nearly 13 people. It's some people say 12, some people say 13. It's not clear. But they
Okay.
definitely killed 9 police officers. And these guys were 2 of the 9.
Wow.
Yeah. So in the rush of trying to escape out of there, the Barrows leave and they leave everything in that apartment in Joplin because they're trying to get the hell out of there. And what they leave includes a couple of rolls of unprocessed film. Do you know where I'm going with this? No, not that kind of film.
Okay. I was like, oh.
It's not a sex tape.
That's what,
Okay.
surprise.
No.
It's not a sex tape.
No, it was not. On that roll of film was the pictures that are now infamous today.
That you take in Tennessee with your friends and your family.
Where they had bought a camera and they were posing and being stupid.
That's badass.
Yes.
I don't care who you are.
So
that's cool.
The next day, these pictures are splashed across the front page of the Boston Globe, and it's pictures of Bonnie with her leg like up on Clyde with her stockings showing.
Oh, no.
Her pointing a gun at him. But the most famous one is of her with her foot up on the rail of the car with a big old stogie in her mouth, toting a BAR.
Honestly?
Work.
You better get into it.
Uh-huh. I love it.
Like, I want to be her friend.
So this was the equivalent of going viral. Like that's what happened. Where those pictures were published and now they go from being small-time criminals to world famous because of these pictures. Yes. Because you have to think, not only are they robbing banks, killing cops, they have the crime element, but there's also the element of there's like sex appeal to it.
Yeah.
Where they're 2 young, really attractive kids having unmarried sex.
Oh my.
Like,
ew.
but I'm being serious. Like, and heaven forbid she smokes. Like, clutch my pearls. Right.
Clutch my pearls.
So that they go from people not knowing who they are only in the areas that they were robbing to worldwide, especially in America, people know who they are.
Okay.
Like, when you went to the movies around that time, you got your news from the newsreels that came before the movies, like previews. And those were now in movie theaters.
She's kind of like a movie star.
She achieved it.
Yeah.
She got her dream. Yeah.
Aww.
So they're splashed across stuff all across the country. Newsreels, newspapers, magazines, they're now famous. But this was a double-edged sword. Because it gave them...
everyone knows what they look like.
That's it. And this is one of my favorite scenes from The Highwayman, which if y'all have never seen The Highwayman on Netflix, highly recommend it. It's a very good movie. Show. Not only because Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson are in it, but this is one of my favorite parts of the movie where Bonnie and Clyde are sitting outside a cafe in their car and a girl comes out and sees them and is like, oh my gosh, it's Bonnie and Clyde. And all the people run out and they are like swarming their car. And so they have to drive away and get out before the police come. And people are like, we love you. We love you. Hey.
Oh, wow.
Like,
so they're kind of like movie stars.
Yes. Because they also dressed really well, which I haven't mentioned yet either.
I feel like everyone did back then.
No, not everybody. Because they hated the fact that they were poor. Both of them did. So they wanted to play this part like the gangsters.
Right.
So they were on the road. They were living out of their car, eating sardines. Like, it was not glamorous. But everywhere that people saw them, they were dressed to the nines because they at least wanted to portray that they were more than they were. So they were beautiful.
Right.
Like, when people saw them, they were starstruck. She always had her makeup done. She had a full makeup case with her everywhere she went. Like, she had a lot of, like, Flapper-esque
I kind of love that.
I do too, except for the fact that they killed people.
Yeah.
But so it gave them the notoriety that they wanted. But now, like you said, everybody knows what they look like. This was also the rise of the FBI.
Ooh, J. Edgar Hoover.
J. Edgar Hoover, that cross-dressing son of a gun.
Oh my God.
He begins his national war on crime. So Clyde is now officially on his list of most wanted men, along with John Dillinger, Pretty Boy Floyd, and Babyface Nelson. So hey, we're famous like we wanted, but now everybody knows what we look like. So now we're in trouble.
Yeah.
One night in June 1933, just outside of Wellington, Texas, Clyde's legendary driving skills finally fail him. Okay.
Ooh.
Clyde's coming in on a new road, but there's a detour, and he doesn't see the sign in time. And he's driving so fast that the car flips over and catches fire. And
Oh,
it's a
no.
wonder that Bonnie and Clyde weren't killed in that, but they escape.
Hmm.
Some say that Bonnie was burned. Others say that she, like, with fire. Others say that she was burned from, like, the motor fuel, like the gas.
Like, yeah.
But very long story short, Clyde gets thrown from the car. Bonnie's stuck in the car.
Oh,
He finally gets her out.
I'd
and
rather be thrown from it than stuck in a flaming car.
her leg gets so burned
Oh.
that they said you could see the bone in some
Ew.
places.
Ugh. Yeah. Okay.
And thank goodness a farm family comes to try to help them, and they manage to save her leg by rubbing in baking powder and grease to get it to stop bleeding. And after this, Bonnie is crippled the rest of her life.
I bet so.
Not only
I didn't
because,
like any of what you just said.
not only because she, like, of course, got burnt, but they couldn't go to a hospital. So it didn't heal right. So she was essentially healing in the backseat of a car with her leg, like, curled up.
Oh.
So it didn't heal straight. So she limped. So both of them had limps. And that's gonna affect their ability to now run and escape.
Literally.
Yeah. So in January of 1934, they decide they want to take part in an early morning raid of Eastham Prison to free 5 inmates. Remember how I told you he's going to go back and try to free
To
people?
the Bloody Ham.
Yep, this is it. Now, there was a man named Simmons who was the head of this prison.
Simmons.
And he's so pissed off that these guys are able to escape and Bonnie and Clyde help them that he decides to enlist the help of Frank Hamer. This is where we are introduced to the character of Frank Hamer, who was played by Kevin Costner in The Highwayman. I love Frank Hamer. Like,
Texas Ranger?
yep.
Okay.
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 Who's the Texas Ranger. This man was retired, but he's the most famous lawman in Texas.
Okay.
And he, like, has killed dozens and dozens of people throughout his career. Lee Simmons hires him and basically says, this is a death mission. I don't want you to find him and arrest him. I want you to kill him. It's shoot him on sight because I'm so mad. So Frank Hamer is hired by Eastham Prison in the state of Texas to go find Bonnie and Clyde.
Okay.
Okay. And so he is so smart that he starts retracing where they have been and where they are going. And he's like, where have they not been to yet? Because they're running out of places to go.
Oh.
And he also notices that in the movie, he has like a phrase like, wild horses always come back to the stable, meaning they're always going to go back to see their families.
Yeah, I picture him as like a mama's boy or something.
Who, Clyde?
Yeah.
Both Clyde and Bonnie were very close to their families.
Okay.
Like every time they would come home, they would give them money. Like one time, Bonnie brought her mom a bunny rabbit home as a gift. I don't know. I would not, don't ever give me a bunny rabbit.
No, I won't. I promise.
Hamer's idea works because in Louisiana, he figures out that Henry Methvin, not related to the Methvins in our family, it's spelled differently. Henry Methvin is a guy that Clyde just busted out of Eastham Prison.
Okay.
His family's from Louisiana.
Ooh. What part? Do we know?
We're going to get there. Gibbsland, Louisiana.
Oh.
Beginning of the story.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So he tracks down this guy's family and he says, look, let's agree to a deal. Your sons with Bonnie and Clyde, they're on borrowed time. We're going to catch them. It's just a matter of when. Y'all help me catch them. And when we catch them, your son can go free.
Okay.
So we're striking
a deal.
a
Good deal.
The parents say, deal. Right?
Yeah. Who wouldn't?
Deal, Howie Mandel, I'm in.
Oh, my God.
Okay. So sure enough, he was right because Bonnie and Clyde had plans to meet Henry Methvin at his parents' house as one of their hideouts. So Hamer and a team of deputies from both Texas and Louisiana, they decide to set a trap. And they're going to hide in the brush along Highway 154. And to make sure that the couple doesn't just drive straight past them, they get Ivy, Henry Methvin's dad, to pull over to the side of the road and pretend like his truck is broken down. Because Clyde is such a nice person that he's going to pull over and help him. Yes, because he sees somebody he recognizes.
Right.
Okay. Meanwhile, while they're setting this up,
Oh, that dude's dad has to feel kind of bad. Maybe not. I
maybe
don't
not.
know.
I don't
But,
know.
oof.
His son was no prize.
Right.
Okay. Meanwhile, Bonnie and Clyde are eating at this place called Ma Canfield's Cafe in Gibson. This place is
That
still there.
that place has to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Anything with the name Ma in it.
Ma Canfield's Cafe. Today, it's known as Bonnie and Clyde's Last Stop Cafe. It's the original
Okay.
building. It's all still there. It's near Ruston. I didn't know that. I told Michael that today. He said, "Why have I
Oh,
never gone there?"
right. Oh,
So
that's cool.
we're gonna have to go.
Okay. Deal.
Witnesses say that Bonnie was wearing a pretty red dress and Clyde was wearing a blue suit with a Western dress shirt underneath it. Some people say Clyde ordered BLTs to go, while others say it was fried bologna sandwiches.
Okay.
I would
Both sound good.
I would have preferred the BLT.
Okay.
But they ordered food and they are going straight into the trap that was set for them about 7 miles away. Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I'm like,
You're
dang
like
it.
bummed out. I
Yeah.
know. But you got to remember, they did kill people.
Yeah.
And they killed innocent people.
Okay.
Like, a lot of people had nothing to do with the robberies they committed. It was a
Right.
lot of people that happened upon them or stuff like
Okay.
that.
That makes me feel better.
So Clyde takes the bait. He
Mhm.
sees Ivy Methman by the side of the road. He slows down. Now, it is said that Prentice Oakley, who was the deputy sheriff of Bienville Parish, they say he fired the first shots, that he popped off the first couple of rounds, and they assume that this is the bullet that kills Clyde because it hits him right in the head.
Oh, good shot.
Right. And they say they hear Bonnie scream, and then they unleash this volley of bullets that basically shreds the car to pieces. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of this. There are
Yes.
pictures of this on the internet.
It's wild.
This car is wrecked.
Wrecked.
You hear me? It's in pieces. Okay.
They're making sure they are
Dead.
KO'd.
This is a rough scene to watch in The Highwayman.
Yeah.
It seems to go on forever. It's just like, it's too much. By the time it's all said and done, there was more than 150 bullet holes in the car.
That's insane, bro.
Ted Hinton, who was one of the deputies that was there, said that when they pulled the bodies out of the car, they were nothing but wet rags. They were just like mush.
Ew.
That's how many bullets were in
Laundry
them.
bags full of meat.
Yes.
Okay.
But they were like, Bonnie had high heels on. He had on a suit.
I don't know why I keep getting so sad.
I know.
But
that's part of it. You're not alone in that. Like, people were bummed.
yeah.
People were really sad. Now, they were pissed that they were killing cops and killing innocent people.
Yeah.
But they kind of wanted them to get away with it because it was something to cheer for.
I could see that.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're
especially back then in the economic climate, I guess.
like, think if you're a poor, like, farmer.
Right. You're like, yeah,
you
suck
can't
it to
wait.
'em.
You can't wait for the next newspaper to get to your house
Right.
so you can read about Bonnie and Clyde.
Wow.
So the lawmen bring the car into town to document the evidence in the bodies, but they were soon met with a huge crowd. Because remember, they were in Arcadia. They were shot down 7 miles away in Gibbsland,
Mhm.
and they got to tow the car back to Arcadia, to where a funeral home is, because they have to like get the bodies out,
yeah.
document stuff, all of that. Word spread so fast
Mhm.
that the town swelled, like I said in the beginning, from 2,000 people to 12,000. People were coming from miles around to see the body.
Wow.
And I don't know if I love or hate this part. This is when I hear this part of the story, it makes me laugh when people nowadays ask creators or writers, like, why true crime? Like, why are people fascinated with true crime now?
It's intriguing.
It's been this way since the beginning of time.
Yeah, this is not a new thing.
Listen to this. It was bedlam. People were trying to take souvenirs off of the car. Someone was caught trying to cut off Clyde's trigger finger with a pocket knife.
Ooh.
People were trying to cut pieces of Bonnie's hair and take her
Wow.
wedding ring off.
Wow.
People were like ripping pieces off of the car, like pulling stuff out of the back. And it says Frank Hamer kept Clyde's fishing tackle box as a souvenir.
That's kind of dope.
It's kind of baller.
Yeah, I like that.
So they finally get the bodies to the funeral home to be identified.
Mm-hmm.
I hate this part. Bonnie and Clyde's families learned of their deaths only when journalists called them on the phone back in Texas to get comment. That's how they found out.
Oh, that is so upsetting.
So once
Oh,
the bodies were released, the families arranged for them to be buried separately, which I think is very sad
me
because
too. They
they
obviously would have wanted to be buried together.
but Bonnie's mom, this is not an exact quote, but she basically was like, he had her in life, he's not going to have her in death.
Oh,
Because she blamed Clyde for
I mean, yeah,
what happened to her daughter.
you can't disagree with her.
The next day, they arranged for visitations back in Texas at 2 separate funeral homes. 10,000 people showed up to Clyde's service.
Wow, I bet Bonnie had more.
She did.
Oh,
A drunk
girl.
man even offered
Oh.
Clyde's father $10,000 cash for Clyde's body, which in
That's
today's
a lot
money
of
is, I have no idea,
a lot.
a lot. And then the Parkers, Bonnie's family, had to battle nearly 20,000 people at her funeral.
Wow.
It was so many people, they actually had a hard time getting to the gravesite. They had to get a police escort because people wouldn't move. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And the largest flower arrangement at Bonnie's funeral came from the newspaper vendors of Dallas, Texas. Because it was because of Bonnie and Clyde that they sold so many newspapers, which I think is very morbid.
Yeah, but like at least they were paying homage, I guess.
They were like, thanks. I know. It's hard to wrestle
It's
with
like
this
sweet,
kind of stuff.
but kind of icky.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Mm-hmm. But we're getting towards the end.
Okay.
So the legend obviously lives on. And Bonnie and Clyde are like 2 of the most recognizable names in American history. And it was during a time when Americans had lost faith in the institutions that built the country.
Right.
And they emerged that gave something people to talk about, but they also gave something for people to root for,
Mm-hmm.
even if it was bad,
Right.
even if it was illegal, even if it was immoral. It was a guilty pleasure for people. They kind of wanted them to get away because they were like Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Right? Their infamous crime spree came to an end in North Louisiana, which forever cemented our state into the complicated history of the 2 most famous lawbreakers of all time. And to conclude, I would like to read the last few lines of a poem written by Bonnie.
Oh,
So they
pumped.
found this among her possessions. So they had everything they owned in that car.
That's so sad.
She kept all of these journals. She was actually a really good writer. You can find all of her stuff online, but I'm just going to read you a few lines from one of her poems, literally titled The Ballad of Bonnie and Clyde.
Nice. I
Okay.
like that.
They don't think they're tough or desperate. They know the law always wins. They've been shot at before, but they do not ignore that death is the wage of sin. Someday they'll go down together and they'll bury them side by side. To few it'll be grief, to the law a relief, but it's death for Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, I just got the chills.
Does that not give you chills?
Yeah, she literally wrote out everything that's going to happen besides them being buried side by side. But I got the goosies.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And that
wild.
is the story of Bonnie and Clyde and how they are a really cool piece of Louisiana history.
Wow. Good job.
Thank you. I loved that. I've always loved Bonnie and Clyde, but it also because it has a little Louisiana in it.
Yeah.
We're going to have to go to the cafe.
I'm so down. We
Yeah.
can go right now.
It would take us like 6 hours to get there probably,
Yeah.
depending on how many times we stop for gas and snacks.
And to TT.
And to TT Potty. But
That was good.
I'm glad you
Really
enjoyed
good.
it.
Really good.
Yeah, one of my like favorite things about it, I think, was getting into the nitty gritty of like the real people that they really were,
Mm-hmm.
but also that people forget they were kids.
Yeah.
I think
were
Clyde
young.
was 25 and she was 22.
When they died?
Yes, they were not
Oh.
older.
whoa.
They were kids.
Yeah, that's younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild. To
And
think
again, there
about.
were a lot of things that they did. They had a lot more exploits
Mhm.
than what I talked about, but I didn't want to be here for 7 hours.
Right.
So as much as I love you and love doing this, I am a little hungry and I know Mom cooked.
Yeah.
So I am ready to get back. But what do you think?
I think it was really, really interesting. And there was a lot of things that I didn't know. So I'm glad you did it.
Mm-hmm. And not a
job.
lot of people know that it's Louisiana history. I think when they see the episode description, they're going to be like, what? That's not
Right.
it. But yep.
Because when I first realized what you were doing, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
how's this going to tie in?
Yep.
But good job.
Oh, thank you. It was
Thanks.
fun. I'm hungry. We got to wrap this sucker
Okay.
up. Well, thank you so much for listening. And remember, God made you.
And the Rougarou too.
So be kind to one another.
Bye.
Bye.
The Big Bad Boot is produced by Lettuce Media and edited by Mallory and Jonah.
Our music was produced by Macro Tracks. Our super cool logo was designed by AWC Graphics. And our sense of humor and childhood trauma was sponsored by Kelly and Abby Morse.